To me, the most successful black businessman in America was Malcolm X.
Come on.
It was Malcolm X. He built mosques in every city. He built a newspaper. This man was a black businessman. The issue is we don't think he was. And they don't teach him like that. That's what black business has to look like to liberate black folks. If you don't have black business like that, you will have black business that's performing for white folks. So you gotta ask yourself, not just about your business, but is everything you're doing performing for black folks, or is it undergirding the billions or trillions of dollars white folks already got? That's it.
You're so wrong that the word wrong does not sufficiently describe your wrongness. You are, as they say, fractally wrong. You are wrong at every conceivable level of resolution.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome back to I Mix What I Like. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, and let's continue to try to do some serious damage to this narrative that should be comical, should be clowned. It is clownish, were it not so pervasive and damaging and having so much impact on so much of the conversations taking place throughout the African diaspora. For a long time over there on Black Liberation Media, for years, before, since, during, and after that project, I and others have been looking to expose the flaws in that narrative. I'll put links in the show description to an almost endless amount of work regarding Malcolm X and the rebranding efforts that take place specific to him that we saw in that clip there. Similarly, for years, we've been critical of that particular space, Earn Your Leisure, and had a fun run on Black Liberation Media with Earn Your Liberation, and where we spent a good amount of time, a fair amount of time, having some fun, admittedly, but offering some more critical analysis and accuracy to what the Earn Your Leisure and satellite entities and that whole universe of Black capitalist punditry argues. So we've engaged that space in terms of what they put out analytically for quite a while. I wrote about them a little bit in my Cryptoganda chapter regarding their demonstrably false claims around cryptocurrency and investment in general. But to see this kind of rebranding and assault on the history of Malcolm X and Black radical struggle and politics and history is a bit frustrating and unfortunate. So in a rare instance, I did actually respond on Instagram to that post and just basically said what I'm saying here, that analysis is false, it's absurd, it's misrepresentative. In one of the responses that I got, the speaker there suggested that I go back and read The Ballad of the Bullet, or what Malcolm had to say about Black business, where in fact he does spend about a paragraph length of time talking about the efficacy of Black business and the importance of supporting Black business. At the same time, I invited this gentleman to review the broader body of work that Malcolm produced, and in particular, the post-Ballad of the Bullet work, given that was April 1964, where Malcolm went, of course, throughout the continent of Africa and the so-called Middle East. In that summer, he would continue to meet with and support, particularly as we covered on the 100-year birthday series tribute to Malcolm X over there on Black Liberation Media. Again, the link in the show description. I went through for several weeks all of the evolving politics that Malcolm had engaged in, whether it be anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, the strength and radical critique he got from African women in particular. We went through the tradition and the legacy, beginning with his own mother, of radical Black women, heavily involved in the Garvey movement, to the anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist communist struggle, the anti-colonial struggle, and these women and, of course, men associated with those struggles were encouraging Malcolm ever to the left. And we went over the book from Jan Carew, where just shortly before Malcolm's assassination, he's having very explicit discussions about the failures of capitalism, the benefits of socialism, the need for him to return back to the United States to engage the struggle here. But the point being that the claim that Malcolm was a businessman and therefore the entrepreneurial endeavors of the earn your leisure crew and black capitalist crew of today is simply false and anti-historical, and it's a diabolical abuse again of Malcolm X as an individual, but the ideas and the history and the time in which he was struggling. It's also an abuse of the analysis that black capitalism and black business is somehow inherently revolutionary or even potentially revolutionary. It also ignores where Malcolm, at the end of his life, as is the case with so many other luminaries, they recognize the shortcomings of these black capitalist narrative mythologies. They recognize them often as propaganda, the subset of what he called dollarism, capitalism, the blood-sucking vampiric nature of that socioeconomic model. Malcolm was very clear that black business and all this associated claims with black capitalism were themselves propaganda, mythology, and false. As we talked about, these black capitalists and others won't acknowledge not only those arguments of Malcolm, but of course his ever leftward movement politically, his support for the Revolutionary Action Movement, his support for guerrilla and urban and armed struggle warfare, his support for anti-colonial movements all throughout Africa and Latin America and Asia, his radical approach to Islam, which would have precluded him from advocating any form of exploitation, which is inherent to the black business and black capitalist arguments of the earn your leisure crew and others. So I will invite anyone who sees this to please check the links in the show description for much more on this. I don't mean for this to be obviously an exhaustive response and defense of Malcolm's actual history and politics. I think I and others have done a lot of that work and effort to make that plain, pun intended. So please do check the links in the show descriptions for so much more on this. But especially given all the energy that I gave in the comment section of that post, I figured why not add a little bit more of hopefully educational and analytical value to a video here and invite folks, rather than silly backs and forths in comment sections, to engage the work. Malcolm deserves it. Black people deserve it. The world deserves it. Any attempted objective analysis deserves that level of effort. But Malcolm X was not a businessman. He was an organizer. His support for the evolution of Muhammad Speaks and an alternative black press was not because he was a businessman looking to, in any form of capitalist exploitative ways, take advantage of his own community. He was looking to build a media and journalistic and communicative arm of the liberation struggle and, at the time, the Nation of Islam. Even for wherever my disagreements are with Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam itself and the black capitalist claims that are often made within those spaces, what Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam were advocating involving black business and the support for black businesses by the black community did have its own political, organizational, and religious point or frame to it. And to the extent there was and remains criticism of the Nation of Islam around those efforts, it's specifically because they mirror the same capitalistic, exploitative relationships that we see in the broader business community. Regardless of perspective or bias, whether you are a wannabe revolutionary or a wannabe black capitalist, the historical record remains what it is. And in this case, Malcolm X's business and newspaper efforts had nothing to do with creating a black bourgeoisie, a black capitalist class, and some ultimate and tacit support for a capitalist economy, a US and Western global infrastructure, and was designed to encourage black people into new forms of analysis, interpretation, organization, and revolutionary activity. And by the way, as we've shown repeatedly over the years, the efforts associated with the Earn Your Leisure crew do exactly what this spokesperson was claiming to be moving against. That is, they do, in fact, support the very white capitalist business infrastructure that he is in this clip claiming is being addressed by their efforts. And in so doing, further abuses Malcolm X and Malcolm's history in the process. It's the Earn Your Leisure crew that talk endlessly about investing in white corporations and the white economy who talk endlessly about following the patterns of behavior of white elite capitalist businessmen and women, whether it's literal investment or tacit support through projecting a narrative that the white capitalist way is the way to Black liberation. Earn Your Leisure do exactly what that gentleman was claiming in really the most contradictory ways to be combating. Let's move back to the actual analysis and arguments and ideas of Malcolm X. Radical political organization, anti-capitalism, pan-Africanism, anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, pro-socialism, pro-labor, pro-organization, pro-radical nationalist engagement with the economy, with the vote, with society, and with the world. And with that, I say peace to you only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say, and as Malcolm X definitely advocated. Peace, everybody.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.